All right, so let's get to it here. What do we think of? Let's start with Abe. Abe Zenshi. What do we have? What do we got? What do we think of his perspective? So who was he? Let's start there. Eddie, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, good job. So he's a part of the Japanese air crew that bombed Pearl Harbor, right? Good. And what did they detail about the squadron leader? Where would he be placed when he's flying, let's say, to a location? Would he be in the front? Would he be in the back? How would it work? Yeah, why would he be in the back? To oversee his whole crew, right? Yeah, and I thought it was interesting the way they flew. They were like, okay, here's the first guy, the second guy's a little bit higher, back and back and back, all the way to the back. Why do they do that? Kale. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, good job. Good job. So I thought that was pretty cool to see. So, obviously the exhaust coming off the planes, so it wouldn't suffocate them, and or obviously so they could see, right? So they had a better, clear view of the direction they're moving. So I thought that was neat. I thought that was neat. So detail a little bit more about his perspective. What do we have? Cassie, go ahead. Yeah, he thought they're at war, right? Yeah, good job. So even before the attack happened, he thought they were actually at war, that this was the opposition. And you can maybe talk about really Japan's advancement in the Pacific from that. They're detailing really how they're expanding and becoming more of an imperialistic power and going into China. We'll know the Philippines here soon, but they already thought that they were at war with the United States. And like you said, once he found out that they weren't at war with each other, that this was a surprise attack against a neutral country, he was really disheartened by it, right? Yeah, he was shocked. He couldn't believe it. And you can maybe detail about the propaganda efforts. I know we talked about that with the rise of dictators of these countries. Okay, they're depicting already who the enemy was, who the opposition was from the very beginning. And we all know that the United States was really the only country that could challenge Japan out in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. All right, good. So you're going towards the end of his perspective, but what else do you have to say? Yeah, so the Arizona, that was the battleship we talked about, still there, right? And they have that memorial. I showed you that video on Friday of people paying their respect, going out actually over the harbor and visualizing and seeing it, the wreckage of that battleship at the bottom of the harbor. And yeah, so he was laying a lot of attacks on the battleships, but specifically the Arizona, which I thought was interesting. And what would he say about what else did you say about that? You said something about afterwards. I wanted to detail on that. So he attacked the Arizona. He was kind of new to it, right? What else did you say? Yeah, he was proud of himself. Oh, you talked like he was really surprised, right? And we could see that attack on Pearl Harbor for the Japanese. Let's face it, for them it was a success, right? They took out a lot of battleships, a lot of destruction, and our whole Pacific fleet was out for 6 months. And for him, because he thought we were at war with this, he was very proud of himself. I'm sure the adrenaline was flowing to a point that he's never experienced before. And for him, this was a huge task that he accomplished, a huge objective. And this was something that was great for his morale for the Japanese. All right, good, good. What else do we have to say about this perspective? Kara, what did you write about? I said he visited Arizona and gave him Yeah, yeah, good job. So after the fact, he visited Pearl Harbor 50 years after, right? And he's paying respect by doing what? What was he doing? What did he do? Barbara? Yeah, he visited Memorial, but what else did he do? What else did he do? What else did he do? Yeah, he shook hands with the veterans. What did he say? Was he sorrow? Like, was he feeling sorrow? Yeah, he was feeling a lot of sorrow. He's like, I can't believe I did this. Like, this was an action that should have never happened. And when he was visualizing the bubbles coming up from the Arizona, what did he think? Cassidy? Yeah, yeah. We know that 2,500 American soldiers died at the event, around 1,200 on the Arizona alone. So when he's visualizing Arizona, he sees the bubbles coming up from that battleship that was destroyed in 1941. He still thought that these were, them trapped under the battleship, that these were their last breaths. And can only imagine how resonating that is with someone, especially that he knew he was a part of these attacks and he was one of the reasons why the Arizona is still there underneath, obviously, the water at Pearl Harbor. Some pretty crazy stuff. All right, so he shook the hands of the veterans, and he also gave a veteran $300 to do what? To do what every year? Kale?
Place a rose every month on Sunday at like a site.
Yep, good job. Good job. So to pay his respects, right? He knows he can't just live there at Pearl Harbor. He came to visit just 50 years after, and he paid someone $300. Like, hey, what would he say every Sunday? Every Sunday, lay a rose out, and this is my ability to pay respect to the soldiers that died here, and he feels like he did an action that wasn't needed, right? That wasn't necessary, and realizing that the war wasn't even a thing yet, the United States was still neutral. Was a huge shock to him. And I thought it was interesting his perspective about it because he partook on the Japanese side, and now his mindset totally changed afterwards. Like after visualizing and seeing the wreckage 50 years after the event, and just the massive amounts of sorrow he's feeling from that. Pretty sad, crazy stuff there. Okay, all right, let's go to Charles. Let's go to Charles here. So who was Charles Merdinger? Tanner, who was he?
He was a range keeper operator on the U.S.
Yeah, the Nevada. Yep, good job. Good job. So he was on one of the battleships, United States side this time. Okay, this is the perspective of a sailor on the Nevada. What did he have to say?
Well, he was one of the first was on the Nevada. He helped to kind of, how do I say, he helped to monitor all of the comms and the communication going around the base.
Good.
The attack, and he helped to set up certain efforts to try and stop the Japanese.
Yeah, good job. Good job. So with communications on the Nevada, on the battleships, and main thing was, hey, this is not a drill. This is not an exercise. And I know I mentioned it before on Thursday of last week and Friday that many of these sailors, these soldiers, these people that are stationed at Pearl Harbor, that they thought this was a train attack, that this was an exercise because it happened on a Sunday. They're still used to a lot of the aircraft flying and performing these exercises, and they had no idea until the destruction started, right? Until the bombing started, and they realized real quick that this wasn't a drill, that this wasn't just some sort of exercise, and it threw everybody that was at Pearl Harbor for a surprise. All right, good. So he was a part of the communications, and the main thing is trying to relay the information to everybody that this isn't a drill, that this is an actual attack. And then what did you say, Tanner? He started to fight back then, right? He started to man a, what did he do?
I think I didn't put it in. I think he went to a 50 caliber gun to try to keep
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so he was pretty much in charge of really utilizing some of the defenses there on the Nevada. He came up and he tried to do his best to try to fight this off. And the video I showed you on Thursday, that kind of just puts it in perspective of what this really looked like and how these aircraft were flying at speeds of over 100 miles an hour, and obviously really hard to target some of these airplanes that were moving so quick. All right, so when he came to the surface then, what did he visualize? What did he see? What did he say here? I thought this was a huge shock. Go ahead, Kale.
So there were planes everywhere, people like fleeing everywhere.
Jumping overboard. But the thing is, what did the water look like? It wasn't really water at the surface. What was it? Yeah, good job. So pretty much it was just a blaze, right? There was just a fire on the surface of the water because all the oil leaking out into the harbor. And he thought that this was hell, right? That he thought he died and he was at hell because of the fire all over the water and the oil and the destruction of the battleships. And like you said, just people acting in frantic in total surprise and jumping overboard and the constant death that was just surrounding him. He just couldn't believe where he was. Cassidy? Yeah, yeah, that's another thing. I mean, even the dead bodies in the water. Okay, you got to think the sharks coming in. It's easy pickings, right? Sad stuff, crazy stuff. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Um, and then afterwards, he just thanked the Lord that he made it out alive, right? It just showed that he was a religious man, and he saw a lot of the symbols in this attack, and just couldn't believe what he was foreseeing, what he was witnessing. All right, good, good. All right, next perspective here. Citizens at Pearl Harbor talk about being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Kay and Frank Tremaine, what they have to say? What they have to say? Griffin, what did Frank and Kay have to say?
They were just civilians in Hawaii when Pearl Harbor happened. They witnessed the event. And I forget which one it was. The first news reporter to see it happen.
Yeah, okay, good job, good job. What about the night before? So, beginning of this article, they talked about their night before. Where were they? What were they doing? What were they doing? Gabe, go ahead. Yeah, they're at a dinner, right? They're at a dance, and they're enjoying themselves. And looking out over the horizon, they saw pretty much the beauty, the views of the horizon. And what did he say? Calm before the storm. Wow. Okay, so it was like he was really almost foreshadowing the event. And obviously, in Hawaii, we know the beauty there, and just seeing the horizon, he's like, "Oh, this is like a calm before the storm." Okay, and realizing that, you know what, maybe we're so isolated, we're out in the Pacific Ocean. There's chances are no attacks are going to happen. We have the whole Pacific Fleet here, and we're protected. And they didn't really think a surprise attack like this could really ever happen. But in a way, kind of foreshadow it, right? He thought that maybe something was coming. All right. So when they woke up from the attacks, what did they think? I thought this was interesting. Kale, we talked about this on Friday before I left. Who do they think was maybe going to launch an invasion on the islands here? Kale?
Found the Germans were like over the hill waiting to attack.
Yeah, good job, Celeste. They woke up from the sirens and hearing that this isn't a drill, probably the radio going off and obviously the bombing sirens and hearing the destruction. They thought that the Germans were just over the hill, that they're going to invade into the military base and to overtake everything. And we know it wasn't the Germans, it was the Japanese, right? And I thought that was shocking to many. I thought that was shocking to hear their perspective of that because, well, they viewed Germany as this bigger threat. And even though it's way across on the other end of the world, they thought the Germans were invading the island. Okay, we all know as Japanese, part of the Axis powers. And then they heard rumors that many of the Japanese then were dropping in parachutes and that this invasion is going to happen and they're going to try to take over the military base and just the panic, the frustration, the surprise of many of these civilians at Pearl Harbor. And they thought that another attack would happen eventually, right? Okay. Okay. So, Griffin, you said about the civilians, okay, and like how this was one of the first reports, right? And how this was something that was shocking, to say the least. Okay, good, good. All right, what about Elizabeth McIntosh? Last one here. What do you have here? Who was she? Who was she? Cassie, go ahead. Yeah, yeah, good job. Star Bolden. Good. Yeah, so they really didn't want her writing too much about, like, let's say the exercises or the practices done by the military because she wouldn't be knowledgeable of it, right? That's what they're pretty much detailing about that saying. And And like I mentioned before, she just thought these were training exercises at first. That she thought that these were just planned drills up in the sky by the U.S. Navy and obviously the Air Force, and she didn't think much of it. All right, so obviously it was in December. So what did she say about maybe the Christmas decorations all over town? What did she say? I thought this was something to note about. What did she say about the Christmas decorations? Eddie? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, good job. So she's just walking in Honolulu, the streets of one of the major cities there, and just realizing that the Christmas decorations were all scattered all over the place, and obviously a horror to think about because Christmas, you're with loved ones, right? It's a religious holiday, and you just really don't think of an attack like that happening during that time period. So again, this was a huge shock to her, and just couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. And what about the hospital scene? What did she talk about with the hospital? Queens Hospital. Kale, go ahead.
How there's so much chaos because there's so many hurt people and how like they're just marking off the difference to the state.
Yeah, good job. Good job. So just witnessing the bodies coming in and people just groaning in pain. And this was just a sight for her. She's never experienced it before. And we mentioned it before with the United States. We have never seen an event like this, right? Okay, you could say the War of 1812, but here this attack at Pearl Harbor was really the first one on our own land that just was a major shock to many people, especially her. She just couldn't believe what she was seeing. And we're neutral for so long, right? I mean, World War One happened, but none of the fighting was ever done on our home soil. And now that this attack happens as a neutral country, just was unbelievable. All right, what about the birds? Oh, what about the birds? I'm a big bird watcher. I couldn't believe when I said that when I read this here. Cassidy? Yep. Symbol of peace, right? Yeah. I mean, that's symbolic in many ways, right? Like you said, the symbol of peace, and you see all these doves, these birds laying all over the street from the concussion of a lot of the explosions, the guns going off, the heavy artillery, and unfortunately, these birds were laying all across the streets, laying across really everywhere because of the constant bombing and the shock waves that occurred. Wild stuff, wild stuff. And she saw the oil in the water. Okay, she saw the bubbles coming up from the harbor, and she thought exactly what Abe thought, right? And she thought that these were the people that were just, last breaths in the water of Pearl Harbor, and very unfortunate. All right, so you guys enjoy reading about those perspectives. So I know it's in many cases sad. Obviously, we don't like to talk about an event like this too much, but I think it's important that we review this, that we look at these people's experiences of the event and what these people actually endured and went through. And like I mentioned, it's unfortunate, but many of these World War II veterans and people that witnessed these events, they're no longer here, and many of them are reaching their last days. So if you know anybody, maybe ask for their perspective. Okay, bell ringer for today. Good job on that. Make sure you guys turn in that assignment. I'm going to give you guys a grade at some point today. But here's the bell ringer. Detail a challenge America faced after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Describe obstacles that the U.S. had to overcome when getting involved in World War II. So we're going to talk about the home front more tomorrow and how the U.S. is going to prepare for this war. And ultimately, that's what wins us the conflict. So Barbara, you got a current event. I'm not going to be here Friday, so it's going to be Thursday though. So day early. Yeah. I don't know. I got to check. Not right now.
Why does it?
Oh, it's not him. Is it? All right. Nope. Cassidy, bell ringer. Stay quiet, please. Thank you.
You're not.
Well, we see Tom Brady's back in action.
Can you believe it? He's unretired. Which is so lame.
The Bucks. Some guy bought his last touchdown ball just last night before he made his return for like $500,000. So that ball is like worthless now. Oops. Way to go, man.
Yes. You don't have to let him respect you.
Cassidy, all right. Stop it.
Make sure she stays up front.
I know. Yeah, actually, we're gonna do that since Friday. You guys were causing a lot of ruckus back there when people were trying to read. So, Cassie, you're gonna come back up front, and yeah, we're gonna just start with that next Tuesday.
She is actually.
All right, so let's get to it here. Detail a challenge America faced after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Describe obstacles the U.S. had to overcome when getting involved in World War II. Go ahead, Tanner.
So after the attack, after the end of the war,
Awesome.
in his diary said that Japan is awoken a sleeping giant.
Yep.
And shortly after the attack, after most of Americans heard of it, they were really fired up. So many women went into industrial jobs in the factories and stuff, while men are into the military.
Awesome.
And many, well, when the women joined the industry, well, the factories, it really boosted the war economy, boosted the economy, and finally dragged America out of the depression.
Good.
And then the U.S. had to avoid problems that they faced after World War I with agriculture and all that.
Awesome. Yep. Good job. Good job. So the biggest thing is that we've never seen an attack like this happen before, right? You can say the War of 1812, but in all reality, no one remember that. So in 1941, when this attack happened, December 7th, many people were shocked. It showed that we weren't as far as what we thought from these other aggressive countries, the Axis powers. With Germany advancing in Europe, they're getting closer and closer. Japan obviously laying the tech on Pearl Harbor in the Pacific. So we were the next target. Eventually, if we don't do something, we might see more attacks, but this time in our own country, in the States. So this was a huge shock. And like you're saying, Tanner, one of the biggest things was that we had to try to shift our economy, right? We were in a depression. Okay, we weren't prepared for this conflict whatsoever. Okay, we can even say, look back to World War One. We weren't ready for that conflict. We were shocked about all the new advancements of warfare in Europe. And now in World War II, these advancements just become more advanced, right? These advancements in weaponry just progress so much in such a short time that we're just not prepared. Right? Not only that, we're finding a conflict in the Pacific and in Europe. So two-front war. So that's going to be very difficult for the U.S. to try to look in the right direction, right? To try to advance during these struggling times with the depression. Okay. And with that two-front war, most of the fighting out in the Pacific is out in the open water. Okay, utilizing aircraft carriers, battleships, and aerial strikes with dogfights up in the air, the open water. Okay, and in Europe, it's mostly on the ground. So again, two totally different environments, two totally different styles of fighting that we have to adjust to all at the same time. All at the same time. So that's going to be a huge struggle. It's going to be a huge struggle. And we'll talk more about the home front tomorrow and how many of the men in the United States were trying to push for this effort. Okay, they're going to try to enlist into the army. Okay, they're angry. They're upset. They want to get involved and try to push back these Axis forces. Okay, we'll talk about island hopping here soon. How we're going to try to push Japan back to their own borders and push them out of the territories that they acquired through the 1930s and early 1940s. And in Europe, obviously pushing back the German army and Italian forces in Europe and North Africa. All right, so it's going to be a struggle. Even women, like Tanner was saying, we'll talk about Rosie the Riveter more tomorrow and how this is picking up more opportunities for women in the workplace and gaining these opportunities to help the war effort. We'll even talk about victory gardens. I know we mentioned victory gardens in World War I, but a similar concept. But we'll mention, like I said tomorrow, how the war effort at home is really what pushed us through this struggle, what pushed us through this conflict. Okay, we could produce so much goods, so much military supplies that it was too much for the Axis powers. Okay, we were literally just the sleeping giant, right? We were waiting to be just woken from this, I guess you could say, slumber through this depression at the end of World War I through the peacetime. And we'll never see number two when it comes to military strength, even to this day. Okay, we have by far the strongest military in the world, and our funding each year is more than all the countries in the rest of the world combined. So ever since 1941, we've never seen number two when it came to military strength. You guys ever see the movies Godzilla, like the Godzilla movies? Yeah, so that's kind of what it details about. How in Japan, a lot of the wreckage in these major cities happened by Godzilla. Well, it's actually depicting, symbolizing the United States, how they woke that sleeping giant. And I thought that's always interesting to maybe make reference from. So that's what it's really detailing about. Okay, any questions? So tomorrow, like I said, we're going to talk about the home front. Okay, I want to show you a video of the home front to carry us into tomorrow's discussion. Okay, that's all I got for today with the lesson.